I don't know what it is about open world zombie survival games, but no matter how many times this genre disappoints us, people never stop wanting that one game that finally gets it right. We've seen countless attempts over the last decade, from massive AAA projects to tiny indie teams, all trying to create that perfect experience where you wake up in a dangerous world, scavenge abandoned towns, build your own shelter, survive against zombies, and slowly carve out your own place in a world that's completely fallen apart. It's a formula that always generates hype because, strangely enough, nobody has truly nailed it yet. We have fantastic survival games, fantastic zombie games, and fantastic open worlds, but putting all of those things together into one complete package has proven to be much harder than anyone expected. People want that Division gameplay demo we've gotten years ago. They want that day before game that was never real. It's just such an interesting and ambitious premise that whoever gets it right first will be massively popular in an instant. That's exactly why I kept following the day before for so long. Like many of you, I wanted it to succeed because, on paper, it looked like it could finally become the ambitious zombie survival experience people had been asking for. Instead, it became one of the biggest failures this industry has seen in years. And it left a lot of players, including myself, far more skeptical whenever another studio announces an ambitious open-world zombie game. That's where this newly revealed survival game caught my attention. Not because it's trying to convince everyone that it's the biggest game ever made, but because it almost does the exact opposite. The developers haven't spent years releasing cinematic trailers that don't resemble the real game. They haven't promised revolutionary mechanics that sound impossible to deliver. Instead, they've shown actual gameplay, explained what players will actually be doing, announced a release date that's only a few weeks away on August 24th, and simply let the game speak for itself. After everything this genre has gone through, that's honestly refreshing to see, at least from what we've seen so far. Welcome to The Dead We Knew. This feels like a studio that's focused on delivering a solid survival experience instead of selling players a fantasy that can never realistically exist. The more gameplay I watched, the more I started thinking that this game actually understands what people have been asking for all these years. Nobody expects every new zombie survival game to reinvent the genre anymore. Players simply want a believable world that's enjoyable to survive in, where exploring abandoned buildings actually feels rewarding, where building your shelter matters, where resource management constantly forces you to make decisions, and where every trip outside your base feels like you're risking something valuable. From everything shown so far, that's exactly the direction this game seems to be taking. And while it's clearly being developed on a much smaller budget than something like The Day Before pretended to have, that's not necessarily a bad thing. Sometimes smaller teams with realistic goals end up creating much better games because they're focused on executing a clear vision instead of trying to promise everything at once. The survival mechanics themselves actually look surprisingly promising. The idea is that your base gradually becomes the center of your entire experience. You begin with almost nothing, slowly expanding your shelter into a proper safe haven where you organize equipment, craft new supplies, prepare meals, rest after dangerous expeditions, and get ready for another day outside. That's exactly the kind of progression survival games need because it gives players a real sense of ownership. When you've spent hours gathering resources while constantly avoiding zombies, every wall you build and every improvement you make actually feels meaningful because you earned it. I also really like how much emphasis they're placing on the world itself rather than simply filling it with zombies. Weather changes dynamically throughout the day. Rain can suddenly begin, the wind shifts, visibility constantly changes, and one of the mechanics that immediately stood out to me is the fog. Instead of being there purely for atmosphere, the fog actually changes gameplay because zombies become significantly more dangerous whenever visibility drops. Suddenly, you're no longer just walking through another forest collecting resources. Every sound becomes more important, every direction feels less predictable, and every decision about whether to keep exploring or head back home becomes much more meaningful. It's a simple idea, but those are exactly the kinds of mechanics that naturally create tension without relying on scripted jump scares. The survival loop also extends well beyond simply looting canned food from abandoned houses. Hunting wildlife, growing your own vegetables, cooking proper meals, and managing your food supply all seem to play a major role in staying alive. That might not sound revolutionary on paper because we've seen similar mechanics before, but when they're combined with exploration, base building, and cooperative play, they create the kind of gameplay loop that keeps survival games interesting for dozens, sometimes even even hundreds of hours? The question has never been whether these mechanics are individually new, it's whether they come together well enough to make players want to keep surviving one more day, and that's exactly what we'll find out very soon. One of the biggest advantages this game has compared to so many others in the genre is simply where it is right now. It's not asking players to wait another 2 or 3 years while promising features that may never exist. It's launching on August 24th. That's important because in just a few weeks we'll know exactly what this game is. There won't be years of speculation, endless cinematic trailers, or promises that slowly become more ambitious every month. Players will finally get to judge the actual product rather than an idea, and after everything that happened with the day before, I think that's exactly what this genre needed. I still don't know whether this game will become the open world zombie survival experience we've all been waiting for, and I don't think anyone should be making those claims before launch, but I will say this: it feels much more grounded than many of the projects that came before it. It looks like a team that understands its scope, knows what kind of game it's trying to make, and most importantly is showing exactly that, instead of trying to convince everyone it's something bigger. If the gameplay we've seen is representative of the final product, this could easily end up being one of those indie surprises that quietly builds a loyal community over time. And considering how desperately players still want a great open world zombie survival game, that's more than enough reason for me to keep a very close eye on it. I also think this game is arriving at exactly the right moment. The zombie survival genre has been surprisingly quiet lately. Outside of a few established names, there really hasn't been that one new game everyone has rallied behind. People are still playing DayZ, Project Zomboid, 7 Days to Die, or Dying Light, but none of those are really filling that specific fantasy of a modern, realistic open world survival game where exploration, base building, co-op, and immersion all come together in one complete package. That's why every time a new project like this appears, people immediately start paying attention. The demand has never disappeared. If anything, it's probably bigger now than it's been in years. What also gives me a bit more confidence is the fact that this team seems to understand exactly what they're trying to make. They're not promising hundreds of players on one server, they're not talking about revolutionary AI that's going to change gaming forever, and they're not claiming this is the biggest open world ever created. Instead, they're focusing on making a believable survival experience where building your shelter matters, preparing before leaving your base matters, and simply surviving another day feels rewarding. Sometimes that's exactly how the best indie games are born. They don't try to do everything, they just execute one vision really well. I'm definitely going to be watching this one closely because whether it ends up becoming a huge success or not, I genuinely hope it does well. This genre deserves another great game. Players have been waiting for years for someone to finally deliver that open world zombie survival experience they've imagined for so long, and while I'm not saying this is automatically going to be that game, I do think it's earned something that's becoming increasingly rare in this genre after everything we've seen over the past few years: cautious optimism. If the final game delivers what we've actually been shown, instead of what people imagine it could become, then this could end up being one of the nicest surprises of the year for survival fans. Like the video for gameplay on it and subscribe to stay tuned.